Alright, hey guys, today we're going to be working on a couple of cutting boards. I haven't made any cutting boards yet, and so this is going to be my first try at making some cutting boards. Let's see how we're going to go. I got some hard maple and I got some ironwood that I found at Woodcraft. I'm going to make two boards. One is going to be regular rectangular type of cutting board, and the other one I'm going to glue up the hard maple, and I'm actually going to cut it out on the CNC machine in the shape of Mickey Mouse, you know, with the ears. And so we're going to see how both of those go. The process is going to be about the same for both of them. I'm going to cut a bunch of wood and plane a bunch of wood, slice up a bunch of wood, glue a bunch of wood together, and hopefully end up with some cutting boards. Like a lot of my videos lately, I think I'm going to do less talking, more showing. Plus I'm going to be making this up as I go. So we're going to see how it goes. Alright, let's get into it. Right, so here is the wood I have. Got two pieces of hard maple and this extra thick ironwood that I'm hoping is going to come out to be a decent cutting board. It is it's very hard wood, and it's got a decent amount of grain and a cool color, so I'm hoping this will be a nice accent. Alright, so the first thing I got to do is I've got to chop this wood down into manageable pieces. So I'm going to do that on the chop saw. I'm going to chop it down into 20-inch pieces, and then see how much that yields. I may adjust that 20 inches once I get this up on the chop saw and figure out what is an even number to cut this wood all down to. And whatever that is will determine the size of my cutting board. That's the nice thing about a cutting board is I'm not trying to meet some certain size. Alright, so let's get this on the chop saw and get that set up, and let's get cutting some wood. Alright, so the piece of ironwood I have is 80 inches long, or 80 inches of what I consider to be fairly usable. And so I'm just going to cut 4 pieces out of that. So I'm going to go with the 20 inches that we talked about, because that's the most expensive wood that I bought, so I'm going to try to use as much of it as I can. So I'm going to go with the 20 inches. I'm going to cut all this wood down into 20 inches, and then I'll take it on the table saw and I'll slice it all down into strips. I may pass some of it through the planer, depending on how it looks. But let's get these pieces cut down into manageable sizes first. Alright, so both the ends of that are damaged, so I'm going to cut off a sliver off the end to give it a nice straight edge and get rid of the damage. And then I'll cut 20 inches, 20 inches, 20 inches off of it. Alright, so here is all my wood that has been at least one edge jointed So here we are back at the table saw. I know for a fact I'm cutting these hard maple pieces into 1.5-inch strips, and so I'm not sure yet on the ironwood whether or not I'm going to do 1.5-inch strips or if I'm going to use 1.5-inch of thickness that is in those ironwood pieces. So if I do 1.5-inch strips, then that leaves me with something else that I have to cut down to like the width of this so that they look right. I could do different size pieces inside the cutting board. I think that might look a little funny, so I'm not sure yet exactly, but I've got plenty of that wood. I mean, I pretty much have enough wood to make like 4 cutting boards, and so I should be able to hopefully make at least 2 out of this. So let's get to cutting these hard maple strips first, see how much I end up with and how much and what I'm going to use that ironwood for. Alright, so I'm going to set up my table saw 1.5 inches and get to cutting these boards. Quite a bit of maple, so cut down into little pieces. I should have enough to make a few. Put it all together. Like I said, one of the boards is probably going to be about this big. We'll put on the CNC machine and cut it into a Mickey Mouse shape. But the other one, we'll use pieces of this and pieces of the ironwood once I get it cut down. Alright, so here we are with the ironwood. I'm thinking this ironwood is deep enough to be used in strips like this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it down to the thickness of these here. So these are going to be pieces, and this is how tall it's going to be. This was cut this way, but this, the ironwood, I'm going to cut this way. So I should be able to get a good number of pieces. And then I've got some marks here that I'm going to get used. But I should be able to get that thick, which is about 1 inch. So almost 1 inch. Alright, so there's all my wood for the cutting boards. I decided against the walnut because it's not enough, it's too different of a color. Ironwood is very red and walnut is very brown, so I thought that was too much of a difference in color. So I'm just going to go with the maple and the ironwood and make a couple cutting boards that are maple and ironwood and one that's all maple. Alright, so the next step I think is to run these through the planer. Some of them are pretty good, but some of them are very rough. And these have to be glued together on this side. So I think I'm going to run them all through the planer to clean them all up a little bit. So let's get that set up. Alright, so here's what I have for the idea for gluing up my cutting boards. I've got two cutting boards that are about 12 inches wide so they can fit through my planer with the alternating woods, the hard maple and the ironwood. I've tried to get the best figure of the ironwood on top, but I still think it's going to be kind of cool. And then I have the hard maple board that's going to be glued together like that, planed off, and then I'm going to put that on the CNC machine and cut out the Mickey shape. I've got these panel clamp things that I bought, and I'm going to try to use those to glue up the hard maple boards. They're kind of a pain in the ass to use, so this may not work, but I need to first put some tape on these so that they don't get glued to the board. So So for 3, I need 6 of these pieces with the teeth in it. They basically sit here, and these clamps clamp and put pressure this way, and also clamp and put pressure this way. So we'll see. Alright, moment of truth. Can I get these clamps on here? Or not? Alright, so like I said, I'm going to do the middle one. Alright, so one's going to go here. One's going to go here. I'm going to put, this is the end piece with a spring here. Not my favorite, so this will probably work. These will be glued together. It's got great clamping pressure this way. If I'd have made new support boards, I probably could have gotten even clamping pressure down. But the whole process of trying to use these for the glue up is just such a pain. So I don't know that I would use these at all. These are great for gluing up boards that you need to be, a few. I'm not sure if this is so great for this project where you're gluing up a bunch of different boards. Obviously, with these, you can have, there's 2 pieces that come for another end of the board, and so actually you could have 4-foot long clamps like these. I could extend this out to 4 feet or more, whatever I could get for support wood. So in that case, if I was making a tabletop, these would be invaluable for that, because you're not going to get clamps either possibly that big or that are going to clamp inwards and downwards at the same time. But even still, something so wide is going to have flex in the middle anyway, So I don't know that if I had to buy these again, if I would buy these again. I would probably invest in some regular clamps and see how that went. With that said, this will work. But I just don't know if these are the right right tool for this application. This last couple of boards are not level. These other ones are not level either. I can feel there's ridges in here. So already the ones that are underneath the support, and this is good support. These are 2x4s. It's not like it's a little 1x or something that should flex. I mean, these are 2x4s on the end, and they should not be flexing. So just not perfect, you know. And if you're looking for these to get you perfect glue ups, these are not going to work. All right, set it over there. Now we're going to do the bar clamps. All right, so first you're going to measure how much you're going to need. Right to the edge so I can spin these around. All the way back. Pull these towards myself. Adjust those where I need them. And that gives me good range. Alright, so now we're going to move these off. Now this one I think I'm going to glue the other way around. I'm going to glue this side, stick it up there. Actually, yeah, I can do that. That's fine. That's it. That's glue up number 2. Alright, so I think the glue is dry on our cutting boards, so we're going to unclamp them and scrape off the glue and run them through the planer. Alright, so I think before I finish sanding off all of these, I've got them all sanded down to 150 grit. I think that before I finish sanding them all, I'm going to trim them off and do what I'm going to do to the boards. Like I'm going to put the juice groove in there, or I'm cutting the 45-degree bevel in the bottoms. The first step is to get these things cut down square on each side. And so to do that, I'm going to use my cross-cut sled. So I'm going to put something down. Another thing to do to make sure it's perfectly square is if you use this edge to cut off, flip it this way and use that same edge to line up. That way this edge is going to be perfectly square to this edge. If you used this edge and it was slightly off, then you may have a little cockeyed board. So I'm going to go to my shortest board to the edge, and that should do it. Alright, so these are all squared and ready to go. They need some sanding. I'm probably going to put a juice groove around the outside. I also think I want to put a 45-degree angle all the way to basically say this is the bottom and it sits on the bottom and gives you, like, not necessarily handles, but you can easily grip underneath a 45-degree angle. And for that, I think I'm going to use the table saw. And I'll use the table saw I'll set it at 45 and I'll cut down probably halfway through the board, so it'll be straight and then 45. So I'm going to knock off 45 degrees off of this. Now with these sides here, this way, it'll be easy because I can just set up my fence, run this down, get the big part out of the way. When I go to do this side, I'm going to have to use the cross-cut miter gauge, and I'm going to have to sneak up on that 45 degree so that the corners line up on the bottom. So that may be a little tricky, but let's get the table saw set up at 45 degrees and see what we got. All right, so 45 degrees. Actually have these little deals. This will tell me the exact angle that I'm at. So what you do is you set it here, basically zero it, then you set it on your blade. Dial in exactly 45 degrees. Exactly 45 degrees. Tighten this down, and then I'm going to double check it. So I'm over here, 0, here, 44.9. It's close enough. Alright, so obviously I can't use this. Hopefully this one. Some throw, although I don't necessarily need. We're good with that. Alright, so the plan is to let's put this here for now. The plan is to go about halfway. It's going to be really hard to tell what halfway is. So I think I'm going to have to make a pass and move it, and make a pass and move it.
Got the bevels that I want, and I think that's going to work really good. These feel good to me. They're nice heavy boards, and I think it's going to be good that I put this here. Otherwise, you'd be trying to grab the board and trying to get your fingers under it, and you couldn't. So I think this bevel is a nice addition to the boards. Next, I want to put in a juice groove around the outside. The problem is I have two different size boards. This one is 11.5 by 19.25. This one is a little less than 11.5 by 19.75. So this one's actually a ½ inch longer. If you remember, I had to cut this one down because of the mistake I made cutting the groove. So this one's a little bit shorter. So what I think we're going to do is go in on the computer and design a juice groove specifically for each board. So I'm going to write down these dimensions, go in and put these things on the CNC machine and get these cut out. At the same time, I'm going to make my program for my Mickey Mouse for the other one. For this guy, which came out looking great. I love the way that the hard maple looks all by itself. Looks like something you'd buy in the store. It came out really good. And so I'm going to make the Mickey Mouse one as well. So I'm going to take all three of these dimensions in on the computer and design these up. I'm not going to show that because it's pretty simple. This is going to be a simple rounded rectangle that I go down maybe 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch around the outside with a round nose bit. Those should be pretty easy. This guy's a simple shape cutout of Mickey head. This one is a simple shape cutout of the Mickey head, and all I need to know for that is what size do I have to work with for that. Other than that, it's fairly simple cut through, and then I need to know how thick so that I can cut all the way through. So we are at inch and a half deep. Alright, so I've got the programs written for the cutting boards, the juice groove, and the Mickey. And so I think I'm going to do the juice grooves first. Those seem to be the easier ones. The tricky part's going to be holding these boards now that have the 45-degree chamfer on them, holding them on the CNC machine. Alright, so the way I've got this clamped, I've got some boards on the edge, clamped higher. I raised these clamps up out of the dog holes, trying to get higher up on the board. Alright, so the bit that I want to use is the round nose. It's called Cora box, but it's got a nice round tip on it. I think I want to use this one. So it's a 1/4 inch shank. I'm also going to run this a little slower than I normally would because I want to make sure I get a nice good cut and I don't have to sand as much. two screws, a little bit of sanding, some oil, and this one will be done. Alright, so there it is, small little Mickey cutting board, and we'll get these sanded down. I think probably. Alright, so this is the final coat of sanding. 400 is what I have. Alright, so I'm going to do this final sanding with 240 grit. I've got some 400 grit, but that just it's just too much. So I'm going to try this 240 and see how it feels after. I also have to sand the edges of this. It just came off of the CNC machine, so I'll probably do a hand sanding on those edges. Alright, that feels really good. Now you're supposed to get these wet, so I'm going to use a little rag with, it's just mildly moist. It's not like I've seen guys spray. I think if you just get it wet, that will raise the fibers for the final sanding. So I'm just going to get this wet a little bit. And yeah, it feels rough right now. So let's raise the fibers. We'll set this over here to dry, and we'll do this one. Alright, all the boards are sanded. Everything is ready to get oiled. And I'm going to put some oil on each side, nice and heavy, and let it sit overnight, let the oil soak in. Alright, so what I'm using is this food grade mineral oil. It says cutting boards, butcher blocks. So put it on up to dry over here. And dry here. Alright, hopefully you can see these. These are the finished cutting boards. They've pretty much soaked up all of the oil, so they're pretty dry. So I'll probably put on another coat of oil, but that's just a finishing kind of touch. You can see, looks pretty good. Alright, that's it. Those are my first 3 cutting boards ever. Again, you can kind of see the little 45-degree angle. I did that mainly for fingers. You can reach under here and you can really, your fingers can grab something. So, alright, that's it. Thanks for watching.